Roses are an incredibly useful plant to have in a forest garden. Not only do they provide you with a quick and beautiful canopy, but they also furnish food for both yourself and your poultry throughout the year. I have to admit that when I first thought about a rose garden here, I was thinking along the lines of colour, beauty and perfume. I'd also seen a photograph of the White Garden at Sissinghurst Castle, and I really wanted to create my own white canopy of roses. However, what I hadn't thought of was the incredible abundance of food that this rose garden would provide, not only for ourselves as we eat the petals and the rose hips, but also for our poultry, who also eat the leaves. Of course, this isn't really the right way to eat them. They're supposed to eat the blossoms off the floor. Roses also have an incredible medicinal value, and you may have already seen my film on using rosewater compresses for swollen face and eyes in poultry. So what is it that makes roses so valuable nutritionally? Well, let's take a look. It's no wonder then that mother hens seem to actively seek out rose petals in order to feed them to their chicks. With regard to the choice of leaves, here they are eating those of Madame Plantier and Alba damask rose, which is almost thornless. It has very delicate, rather delicious looking leaves right from the start of the season, and I did wonder about the prickles on roses because they also are very partial to Madame Alfred Carrier rose, which is a larger leafed rose, but again thornless. However, this year I've noticed them tucking into the leaves of Megmerales, a sweetbriar, which is a very prickly rose. And I do think that chickens are very selective in the way they eat. They're delicate eaters, and thus they can get round thorny problems. Well, we use rose hips to make a low sugar version of rose hip syrup, which we then freeze. I use it in cocktails, and I also make a rose hip as well as a rose petal ice cream. The best rose hips are the rugosas, but although I have several rugosa bushes, I'm very lucky if I ever get to eat the fruit. This is basically because it's so tasty that all the wild birds in the garden eat the rose hips from those plants first. I didn't even know that my birds would eat rose hips until I was doing some winter pruning of the Kifsgate rose. I was just cutting it back a little. I had intended to put the hips to one side for the wild birds, put them in a mound in the garden. But I suddenly noticed that the hens were actually in the cagette eating the rose hips. Since then, I've begun to cut them for them, especially when it's really cold. because of the vitamin C content, which is one of the first vitamins to be lost to coal stress. Sort of eat the whole thing. See, breaking them open, and break them open and eat the seeds. And then there are even more benefits of growing roses. Here's a little green finch having a breakfast on a snowy morning. And here are the bees amongst our roses. We even got honey for this because our neighbour was totally convinced that his bees spent most of their time in our garden on our roses. This is Madame Alfred Carrière, a noisette rose raised first in the late 1800s. And it's a very useful rose from the point of view of leaves and blossom. A lot of old roses don't repeat flower, whereas this one will flower all the way, well, it could actually flower all the way through into spring. And it's an easy one to take cuttings from. This actually is a cutting. It's enormous and it's only been going a few years, but it's grown over this pergola. So if I wanted to take a cutting of this, which I probably will do anyway because I'd want to cut back some of this foliage because it is it's quite a lax, large shrub this, so it can get damaged in the winter when the wind blows. There's lots of ways to do cuttings and I don't know whether any are the best, but I'll give you several that I use. One is people say don't take a cutting from a stem that's already flowered. Well, I've done that and that works, so if that's the only cuttings you can do, take them by all means. Some people like to take a heel with their cutting. A heel is a piece of the wood on the main stem, so you're taking it here and leaving a little bit of the main stem on it. That's your heel. I'm just going to snip it there. Make a clean break. It's actually got a node there, so there's likely to root from there. And just take it back to the top 2 leaves. And that's the sort of length you really want for cutting. It's quite, still quite sappy because, as I say, we've had a very hot summer here. And this one I'll do with a heel. Just break it off there. And you see, I've got a little bit of heel there. Let me see if that's better grow. And again, just probably even try that one. Again, back to the 2 leaf breaks of leaf. So if you imagine that as your flower pot, you want to fill the bottom 2 centimetres to 1 inch with sand. This is for drainage. And then you would put your cuttings in like that, and then you'd fill the rest of it up with ordinary soil. Got my helpers here.
Yeah.
Thank you. Anyway, you get the idea.
So is the bare end in the sand?
Yes, we're just touching it. Just touching it, because the sand is for drainage, because otherwise you don't want it to get waterlogged. But you want it to be damp. So if you're pruning some long shoots back and you've still got enough leaf on, you could cut it, say here, on this rose, and then you could make another cut there. Your bottom leaves off and you're left with your cutting like that. And then you can keep on going up the stem, taking more cuttings as you go. That way you don't lose any of your valuable rosewood. And I do rose cuttings all times of year. I mean, if you go into somebody's garden and see something you like, ask them and take some cuttings. You can also go to parks and gardens where there's a gardener working and look in his rubbish bin and ask him if you can take cuttings. I've done it that way as well. And the thicker pieces are really easy to just push. I just pushed it straight into the soil, and then you can see the amount of growth. This is since I trimmed it in the spring, so it's got that much growth on it. That's just come from the top leaf that I left on. And in case you're wondering how the chocolate, elderflower and rosehip sauce ice cream turned out.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah?
Where's yours?
I hope you've enjoyed this film, and if you have, then I hope to see you again. Until the next time, think about buying some bare-rooted roses. Now's the time to plant them, and what is more, they're cheaper when you buy them that way. All the very best, and thanks for watching.